At the frayed edge of a quiet town, where winter clung to the pavement like an old grudge, an 18-year-old black boy rode alone into the cold. Andre's breath fogged the air as he pushed his mother's rusting bicycle down a cracked sidewalk. Every push of the pedal sounded like it might be the last, the chain whining, the rear rack rattling behind him. He was down to his final delivery of the day. One more drop, one more envelope, and if he made it before 8 p.m., he'd have enough for another week in the basement room above the pawn shop. Miss it, and the lock would change by morning. The wind bit harder now, slipping past his jacket collar, needling into the thin cotton beneath. But Andre didn't stop. Not until something strange pulled at the corner of his vision. An old woman stood alone at the edge of a near-abandoned bus stop. People walked past her like she didn't exist. A woman with groceries hurried by without glancing up. A man in headphones swerved around her without even looking. Everyone moved except her. She wasn't waiting. She looked lost. Wrapped in a wool coat 2 decades out of style, her hair peeked out in soft gray tufts from beneath a flattened knit hat. In her small, shaking hands was a leather purse that had clearly seen too many winters. She looked at every passing car with desperate hope. Her lips moved faintly. Something about Bus 12, Willow Lane, or maybe Garden Street. Her voice tangled with the wind. Andre paused, water bottle in hand. His delivery bag tugged at his shoulder. Time was bleeding out fast. Rent or the streets. This wasn't a metaphor. It was his math. But the old woman stepped forward, hesitated, then stepped back like the sidewalk itself had changed shape under her feet. Andre's grip tightened on the handlebar. He glanced at his watch. 2 minutes, maybe 3. But the image of her, fragile, misplaced, settled in his chest like a stone. Then her voice carried toward him again, frail and unsure. Was it Garden? Or Willow? Bus 12? I think I missed it. He didn't think. He walked his bike forward. Ma'am? He said gently. You all right? She turned toward him, startled, but not afraid. Her eyes clouded with something older than confusion. I was trying to get home, she said softly, but I might have missed the bus. Or maybe it missed me. Her laugh was faint, hollow, like something fragile too long held together. Andre offered a soft nod. Where's home? Maybe I can help. She blinked, then opened her purse, fingers rifling without purpose. Buttons, coins. An old bus pass dated 2 days ago. No address, no direction. Just fragments of something that used to make sense. Andre felt the tension rise in his throat. Then he saw it. A silver chain around her neck. A pendant. Oval-shaped. Small. Resting quietly against her coat. She looked down at it, fingers brushing the charm. I think my daughter gave me this. Or maybe it was my husband. She didn't remember. But Andre did something most people wouldn't. He stayed. Andre leaned in, eyes narrowing as he read the tiny inscription etched into the silver pendant resting against Evelyn's coat. Delicate cursive, worn by time, revealed just enough. Evelyn Rose, 48 Oak Hill Drive, North Side. His breath hitched. Oak Hill. He knew it. A wealthy stretch past the edge of town, almost 2 hours away by bike, and most of it uphill. For a moment, the cold clock inside his chest ticked louder. If he didn't make his delivery in time, he'd lose his bed. Tonight, it'd be the street. But Evelyn looked up at him, eyes soft, cloudy, and trusting. Not because he promised anything, just because he didn't keep walking. Some choices don't earn money, some just carry weight. Andre smiled, more resolve than joy. It's a long way, he said, but we'll get you home. He eased her onto the back rack of the bike, tied his spare scarf around the seat for padding, then took off his jacket and wrapped it gently around her shoulders. Hold on tight, he said. We'll go slow. She giggled softly. You remind me of my grandson. Always had shoes like those. Scuffed and proud. Andre didn't correct her. He simply pedaled. They rode into the twilight, leaving behind the flickering streetlights and the thinning trees. The sky bled from lavender to gray, then into a soft, heavy black. The road curved, stretched, rose. Andre's legs strained against every hill. But he didn't slow. Behind him, Evelyn hummed. Snippets of forgotten tunes. Fractured memories sung out into the cold. Sometimes she asked where they were. Sometimes she forgot asking. Every time, Andre answered like it was new. We're almost there. Just past the next hill. The wind sharpened. Street lamps grew fewer. They crossed fields blanketed in frost and bridges barely lit by the moon. When she needed a break, he pulled over at a gas station and bought her tea with his last dollar. She pressed it into his hands. You take the first sip. You need it more. Her voice carried the same tender steel his mother once had. By the time they reached 48 Oak Hill, the iron gate was curled in ivy, the white paint chipped and peeling under porchlight glow. It was nearly 9:30. Andre's body ached. His hands were numb. But he smiled anyway. He knocked twice. A man in a housecoat opened the door, panic on his face, until he saw her. Miss Evelyn, oh my God. Where have you been? We called hospitals. Evelyn blinked. I went for a walk. Or a ride, I suppose. She turned to Andre and smiled. The man trembled. Please come in. Warm up. Eat. We'll drive you back. But Andre shook his head gently. No need. I should get back before it gets colder. He scribbled his number on the back of a receipt. In case she ever needs help again. Then he got on the bike and rode into the dark. He didn't know his key would no longer fit the lock, didn't know his room had already been cleared, but he also didn't know something far more permanent had just begun. By the time he reached the edge of town again, the warmth from the tea had faded. His knuckles stiffened. Every crack in the road rattled up through the handlebars into his spine. It was lonelier now, no soft voice behind him, no familiar weight, only wind and winter. He coasted the last block toward the boarding house, paint peeling, porch light broken. He climbed the steps, reached into his pocket, and felt nothing. At first he thought it was just the wrong pocket. Andre's fingers dug into the other side of his jacket, then the jeans, then the lining. But with each pass, his hands came back empty. The key was gone. He stepped onto the porch and knocked lightly, hoping the landlord was still awake. No lights. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. He tried the doorknob. It didn't budge. Then he saw it, just to the right of the door, beneath the crooked mailbox. A plastic grocery bag slumped against the wall, half frozen from the wind. Inside it, a spare shirt, a cracked phone charger, a towel. His life reduced to what could fit in a bag too flimsy to carry anything worth stealing. Taped to the door, in thick black marker, were 3 words. Past due locks. He stared for a long moment. No curses, no noise, just stillness. The kind that seeps in when the world goes cold, not outside, but inside your chest. Andre turned and walked his bike toward town. His legs screamed from the hours he'd already ridden. But he didn't stop. Movement meant warmth, even if it didn't mean hope. It was nearly midnight when he passed the back alley behind Johnson's Market. A corner store run by a man who'd given him odd jobs here and there. Restocking, sweeping, even carrying crates during deliveries. Nothing regular, but enough to matter. Andre knocked once on the metal side door. The wind rattled in reply. Then a flicker. Light came on inside. The door creaked open. Mr. Johnson stood in a thick robe, holding a mug that smelled like coffee and something stronger. He didn't ask questions, just studied Andre's shivering frame. Didn't make rent, huh? Andre shook his head. Mr. Johnson glanced up at the sky like it might offer instruction. Then he stepped back and said, Storeroom's dry. There's a cot in the corner. Don't touch the wine crates. And don't freeze to death on me. Andre exhaled. Thank you. The room smelled of cardboard, citrus, and something like dust baked in old sunlight. The radiator in the corner hissed like it was angry at being useful. He didn't mind. He pulled the cot's blanket around his shoulders and sank into the thin mattress. His body hurt. His bones throbbed. But for the first time in weeks, his heart was quiet. The ride to Oak Hill still echoed behind his eyelids. Evelyn's hand on his shoulder, her laugh, the way she hummed when she forgot where they were. She reminded him of something steady. He slept thinking of her pendant, of wheels over gravel, of her voice saying, "You remind me of someone I love." Outside, the wind pressed against the walls, looking for cracks. Inside, Andre slept. Miles away, Evelyn Rose sat at her kitchen window, now fully awake. In her lap lay the coat she'd worn that night. In her hand, a torn receipt. A phone number scrawled across it in slanted blue ink. She stared at it like it was something sacred, then whispered his name, softly, reverently. The first warm thing she'd said aloud in years. Morning came slow and pale, like the sky wasn't sure if it should bother. Light spilled into the storeroom through a frost-flecked window. Andre still lay curled under the thin blanket, the air cold enough to sting. But he didn't wake from discomfort. He woke because it was time. His body ached in familiar ways. Not just from the cot, from carrying too many days alone. And still, when he rose, he did it without complaint. Some boys wake to alarms. Andre woke to the weight of surviving. Andre folded the blanket carefully, pressed it against the wall, and moved toward the front of the store. The rubber soles of his shoes made no sound on the linoleum, and the stillness suited him. Mr. Johnson was already at the counter, as he always was, opening the shop with the worn precision of a man who believed in quiet rituals more than miracles. He grunted when he saw Andre, then slid a banana and a half-filled paper cup of coffee toward him. No words. Just that small, silent acknowledgement between men who know what it means to show up anyway. Andre murmured a soft, "Thanks," peeled the banana slowly, and stood near the window. Outside, the town stirred to life. Steam rose from car hoods. Kids dragged backpacks over slush-damp sidewalks. A single dog barked from somewhere unseen. Then nothing. The morning looked like any other. Until the black car pulled up. It was too quiet, too smooth, its surface gleaming in a way no vehicle on these streets ever did. It glided to the curb like it had arrived on invitation, not wheels. The man who stepped out didn't belong here. Tailored coat, polished shoes, a slip of paper in his hand. He glanced at it once, then looked directly through the store's foggy front window, eyes locking on Andre like he'd been searching and expected to find him right there. The bell over the door gave a faint chime as the man stepped inside. The air tightened. "Excuse me," he said. His voice was smooth but carried the weight of purpose. "I'm looking for someone named Andre." Andre turned slowly, his body suddenly still. "I'm Andre," he said cautiously. The man's posture softened. "Miss Evelyn Rose sent me," he said. "She remembers everything. She asked me to find you, to thank you. In person." Mr. Johnson froze mid-sip, but said nothing. Andre looked down. In the man's hand, the torn receipt. His own handwriting. The number he'd scribbled in the dark, expecting it to fade like everything else. The man, Charles, stepped back, holding the door open. "She's waiting, if you're willing." Andre hesitated. The idea of returning to that house, crossing that threshold again, felt impossible. He wasn't anyone, not really, just a boy with no room, no bloodline, no future. What he did wasn't charity. It was instinct. "I just wanted her to get home safe," he said quietly. "That's all it was." Charles nodded with quiet respect. "And you did. But she says you gave her something more. A moment of clarity, a reminder of who she was before everything blurred." Andre looked toward Mr. Johnson. The old man shrugged with the kind of indifference he used to hide concern. "Go. Your cot'll still be here." With a breath that felt larger than his chest, Andre nodded. The ride back to Oak Hill felt surreal in daylight. The trees that had once closed in like shadows now stood proud and still, like sentinels guarding a secret path. The turns were familiar, the hills not quite so tall. But his legs remembered every slope, every stone. When they pulled into the long drive, the grand white house didn't feel imposing. It felt like a memory. Charles led him through the side door into a room bathed in sunlight, lined with books, and filled with warmth that didn't need explaining. And there she was. Evelyn Rose. Not the wandering woman from the night before, but someone composed, alert. Her eyes were focused, her hair neatly pinned. When she saw him, her entire face softened. "You," she whispered, voice trembling from something real. "You brought me home." She reached for his hands. Her grip was firm. And the silence that followed felt like something sacred. Her hands, warm but fragile, clasped his with surprising strength. "I remember everything," Evelyn said. "Every turn, every word. You didn't treat me like I was fading. You made me feel safe." Andre lowered his eyes, unsure how to hold words that heavy. It felt like too much praise for what he saw as so little. But Evelyn wasn't done. She leaned forward, her gaze steady and kind. "I don't know your story," she said softly, "but I'd like to. And if you don't have a place to go, this house, it has too many rooms and not nearly enough kindness. I'd be honored if you'd stay. Not for a night. For as long as you'd allow." Andre blinked. He hadn't expected that. Not from her. Not from anyone. It was generous. No, more than generous. It was unimaginable. He stepped back slightly, voice low but firm. "That's kind, truly. But I didn't do this for anything. I just wanted to make sure you were all right, that's all." Evelyn didn't flinch. "And that," she said gently, "is exactly why I want you to stay." He didn't answer, not right away. The silence hung between them, quiet, open, and unsure. Not uncomfortable, just real. Later that evening, Andre returned to the market. He slept again in the storeroom, beneath the same thin blanket, near the same rattling radiator. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. He'd been seen, not for what he lacked, but for what he carried. A quiet steadiness. The kind that shows up even when no one is watching. And somewhere back in that sunlit room, Evelyn sat by her window. Her heart less alone than it had been in years. She was already preparing to ask again. Not from pity, but from recognition. Because sometimes family isn't blood. It's who you choose to walk home with in the dark. The next morning came soft and hesitant, brushed in pale gold behind gauzy clouds. The kind of light that didn't insist. It simply arrived. Andre woke early, as always. He swept the storeroom floor and stacked the crates with his usual care. But his thoughts weren't on the broom in his hand. They were on her words, her offer, her voice. He replayed every sentence through the night like a song he didn't know how to stop. She hadn't spoken with authority. She'd spoken with hope. And he didn't know what to do with that. He was still wiping dust from a shelf when the bell above the front door gave a soft chime. Not the sharp rattle of a regular. This sound was different, measured, gentle. He turned. It was her. Evelyn Rose. No driver. No grandeur. Just a shawl wrapped carefully over her shoulders and a small leather bag resting neatly in the crook of her arm. She walked toward him, not with command, but with care, with purpose. "I hope you don't mind me coming," she said. "I've been thinking about you all night. That probably sounds strange, but I mean it kindly." Andre nodded, unsure his voice would work if he tried. Evelyn looked around, then leaned in slightly, like what she was about to say belonged only to the space between them. "I've lived in that house for a long time," she said. "But it has never felt so quiet as it did this morning. Not even after my husband died. Not even after my grandson." She paused. Drew breath. "You remind me of him. His kindness. The way he listened. And when you helped me, something in me woke up." Andre looked down, his fingers curling at the counter's edge. Evelyn reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet, handwritten ink, trembling, but clear. "This isn't a contract," she said. It's not a deal, just an invitation. No conditions, Evelyn said softly, handing him the note. Just support, while you find your footing. Andre unfolded the thick paper with care. Inside was an offer, a place to stay at the estate, a modest monthly stipend, and beneath that, in a softer line of cursive, a quiet promise, if you still want to finish school, we'll find a way. He didn't speak, not for a long time. The world outside the window kept turning. Cars passed slowly, leaves twisted in the breeze. Somewhere, a delivery truck rumbled past. But inside that corner store, something invisible had shifted. At last, Andre looked up. He didn't look nervous. He looked steady. I'd like that, he said. I'd like to come. That afternoon, Charles returned, not in formality, but because Evelyn had insisted. He's not climbing that hill again, she'd said. Not on that bicycle. Andre packed what little he had into a backpack, said goodbye to Mr. Johnson, who shoved a paper bag of sandwiches into his hand with a grunt. About damn time, he muttered, turning back to his register before emotion could catch up. Andre smiled and climbed into the back of a car that smelled faintly of pine and something else. Possibility. Life at the estate wasn't extravagant. It was quiet, clean, peaceful. Andre was given a sun-washed room that looked out over a garden still waking from winter. He was offered time, not pressure, books, rest, space. Within weeks, he was back in school, his tuition quietly covered by a fund Evelyn had established in his name. She never bragged, never made him feel like a cause. Instead, she made room. Room in her schedule for long walks through the greenhouse, for tea at the table near the window, for weekends spent dreaming up what they might do, now that they had time and intention on their side. Together, they built something neither could have built alone. A small local foundation funded from Evelyn's estate, the Willow Light Fund, named for a street she couldn't recall, and a kindness she would never forget. Its mission was simple: to lift young people with potential but no path, to shelter elders who'd been forgotten by time, and to remind anyone willing to listen that dignity wasn't something earned. It was something owed. Andre helped draft the first programs. He met with social workers. He spent hours volunteering at a community center the fund restored, painting walls, fixing doors, listening. And every now and then, he still rode that same old bike into town. Not because he had to, because it grounded him. Because it reminded him that where you start isn't where you stay. And each time he passed that empty bus stop at the edge of the sidewalk, the one where the wind had first carried Evelyn's broken question toward him, he slowed. Just a little, tipped his head back, smiled. Because sometimes home doesn't arrive with grand entrances or open arms. Sometimes it finds you when you pause, when you pay attention, when you ride just a little farther than you were supposed to. You don't have to change the world to matter. Sometimes, all it takes is stopping for someone who is about to be forgotten.